right, we're going live here. Let me pull up live chat. Make sure, need to get the mic. Get the microphone in place. Make sure everybody can hear okay. Let's see what we've got here. The streaming quality looks solid. Here we're in public mode, public streaming. Thing looks pretty good. Let's see what we've got here. Looks live. Let me go back over here. This looks like we're streaming live. Over here looks like we got a bit of a hold up. I'm not sure. There we go. We got some people jumping in. Hey, are you guys seeing this live, or is it just me where it seems to be stuck? Good morning, Gaming Crypto and Brian Dark. So, let me gotta figure something out here. See if you guys, hi, it's live. Okay, cool. All right, it's just on my end then. Let me do a just refresh this here. You know what? Let me pull it up. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna blast this out onto Twitter. If you guys could do the same, that would be awesome. I am going to start streaming. I got to download, or I got to get this software that that Stephen Chip over the XRP Minute has been using to allow streaming on multiple platforms at the same time. So now that I'm back here, I am going to give that a shot and start streaming at least on 2 different platforms at the same time. But I'm gonna try to do YouTube, Twitter via Periscope, and DLive. I think that would be, that seems to be pretty decent, a decent way to go. It's amazing though. I think the goal really with streaming over to the Twitter via Periscope is really to, let people know that you're on YouTube. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of ways to interact via Periscope. I'm not sure if that seems to work in live chat, but that's something that I'm going to be working on today and tomorrow. Via FOMO. Alright, I'm just putting together a quick tweet here. And let's see what we get. See if I can get this out there. Alright. I think it just went out. It looks like it went out. Alright, that's all good. Get out of that. And let me come back over here. Awesome. Alright. Let me open up YouTube on my phone. As the YouTube over here seems to be, hey, XRP the standard. Dansky, what's going on? I'm gonna pop this out, and I'm pretty much ready to start chatting here. Let's see, make sure this looks like it went live. All right, I think I got everything in order. It always takes a few minutes to get things in order, but there we go. All right, got a couple people on. I know it's always early, or depending on where you're coming in from. If you're over in Europe, UK. Glad you're joining on midday. Really appreciate that. And so last night, actually there's been a ton of things that have been going on over the past couple days. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. Primarily, what I want to focus in on today is really mass media frenzy over digital assets, and really to identify what the potential impact can be, will be, when it comes to mass media. What's the impact, whether it's FUD or FOMO. And so I think we can use some good examples of what the mass media is doing, and this kind of goes back to a couple conversations that we've had here when it comes to large financial institutions working with mass media and really pushing and spreading some FUD or pushing FOMO, really dependent on what their desired outcome is. And so I think that it's an interesting topic, especially if we, for those of us that have sat in on DNI's chats, when he talks about really looking for the hidden meanings, or not really the hidden meaning, but the hidden intent from these organizations. And that's what I wanted to really go through. So in examples that we're going to really use to talk about this, we can focus on some of the new revelations from both ETrade and from TD Ameritrade when it comes to beginning to expand into the digital asset space, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, what have you. So before I get there, I know we have a small group on this morning. I like kind of get this get the committed group to get on first thing on Saturday. So what I would like to get a little bit of feedback. If you guys can give some feedback, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the delay is here, and it looks like it's skipping every so often. And I'm trying to figure out if there's like a 5-second delay or whatever. But anyhow, wanted to get some feedback from you guys regarding what your thoughts are on the significance of Kitao from SBI Japan being added to the board of directors of Ripple. And just my brief opinion on that, as you guys are chatting through here, throwing in some ideas. Just a brief opinion on that, and again, we have to track back and look at some of the hidden intent. There are a lot of other things that are going on. So if we just observe Kitao being added, and we just look at Ripple in a vacuum, I think we're missing the point when it comes to all the other things that are going on at the exact same time, whether it's what's the discussions at the IMF level, etc. So, hey, Mr. D, man, glad that you're able to make it to the stream. If you haven't subscribed yet, remember to subscribe to the channel. Glad you're able to join on an early morning. Are you in the U.S. or out of the U.S.? So if you guys want to throw in any feedback on that, Kitao being added to the board of directors, we can always pop back to that. So again, the point, New Zealand, awesome, and that's awesome. Get people that pop in from Australia, New Zealand, got Ireland represented here. We've got, it's great seeing people from all over the world that we're able to interact and discuss this important topic. Dansky, he has connections in multiple industries. It's a collaboration. Yep. XRP the standard. Vegas, man. 5 a.m. Or wait, you guys don't have daylight savings time over there, do you? It's like Nevada, Arizona, or does Nevada go on daylight saving time? Originally from Ireland. What part of Ireland? It's awesome. So, all right. So, what like I was saying, we've discussed. Let me switch this over real quick. Christine Lagarde. Yep, exactly. So let me make a quick transition here. There we go. See if that works. So give me an idea of what potential delay there is as well on the stream. There we go. Okay, that's not so bad. That popped up pretty quick. Dublin, nice. You know what? I've mentioned this before. Ireland is by far one of my favorite places to visit. I love going to Dublin, but my favorite place, I love all of it. I haven't been north yet. Next trip we're planning on heading north. But one of my favorite things to do whenever I land into Ireland, I always like getting in early. We get in around 6 a.m. And then what we'll do is drive down to there's a hotel resort golf club called Tulfaris down in Blessington. Not sure if you've ever been there. That area, they have, I guess there was an old town that's now a lake, and the town is in the lake. They had flooded the town at one point, and then being able to go over to the Wicklow Mountains and that area is just phenomenal, and I just love it. Absolutely love it. And then you have the Glendalough Mountains. I've hiked up through there before, and it's just an outstanding place. So if you guys haven't been to Ireland before, just gonna put a plug in for Ireland, and if you do, make sure you check out. Obviously, it's great being in the cities, but if you can get out and about into the small towns, outstanding. And it was actually my first trip there. We were over in Blessington, staying at Tulfaris, and I always like going there. We'll spend like a day or two at Tulfaris just to acclimate and kind of enjoy, and it's super just serene and relaxing. Plus the golf course there is just impeccable in the morning. It's just amazing to look at. But we went into the small pub in Blessington, eating dinner. Didn't really know what to expect, and there was a red velvet rope kind of dividing off another room, and then all of a sudden they open up that room, and after about 20 minutes or so, we went into that room after dinner, hanging out in there, and little by little, people from the town started showing up with instruments, and then they're just playing. It was absolutely fantastic, having live music, traditional Irish music, and that was really cool. So Carrie, hey, that's awesome, man. I'm glad that New Zealand. There you go. That's all. I'm glad to see people from, like I said, all over the world popping in. Glad you're able to check out the. Yeah, exactly. Wicklow's really close to Dublin, so it's an easy drive. I've done that staying in Dublin and then driven over to Glendalough for the day and hanging out in that area. There's another small town, I can't remember it, but they have two pubs over there, one called the King and one called the Queen. And one trip I was flying over there, actually flying out of Germany, and I'd stopped over there for a few days, and I was told you have to go and eat at this restaurant called the Queen. They have the best fish and chips. So we ended up over there. It was kind of a cool trip. Let's see, Starbucks. Who's from Starbucks? Mike G, listening in Starbucks over in Atlanta. Nice. So let's see here. Let me go through here. We got Minnesota on. Charles, what's up from Minnesota? Glad to see you on. All right, so let's kind of get back to this, and really going into, again, the significance, and as we break down all of these different elements that are happening. And if we looked at one element, just one thing, we focused in on it and said, you know what, this is all functioning in a vacuum. If we just look at the digital asset space, if we just track coin market cap, but we don't look at the total impact of what's happening around the world, that's happening from a economic perspective. And now one thing that we should always consider is that large financial institutions will always gravitate to where they're going to make money. So if we understand that they're gravitating to where they're going to make money, and they've identified that the digital asset space is now ripe to begin making money, then that really says something. Now, up until this point, let's also identify what the large financial institutions have been doing. So I've discussed in previous videos the way the FUD and FOMO of the mass media is utilized to really manipulate the retail investor into buying or selling stocks. So the same thing has really been occurring if we look at it from that perspective with the digital asset space and the FUD and FOMO that the media has been promoting. But from a higher level, as we look at the media, they don't really understand the dynamics of the digital asset space. Many of them don't understand the lingo of the digital asset space. Many of them don't really understand the digital asset space at all yet. They will continue talking about it one way or the other, pro or con. Now, when they're working in tandem, now it's difficult. Exactly, if there's some I don't want to say coercion isn't the right word, but let's say working together between media outlets and these large financial institutions, because it does seem that as it pertains to stocks, there does seem to be a run up in focus, again, whether it's FUD or FOMO, based on what the larger financial institutions want as a desired outcome with a stock. So if it's an IPO that's launched, they're gonna push how amazing this IPO is, and they're staking it at, let's say, $70, and they focus on it and they hype it up. And meanwhile, the large financial institutions, and I've talked about this before, are all buying pre-launch. So if they're buying pre-launch, they're getting in at a significant lower level. And many times in an IPO, they'll say, oh, they've raised it. It used to be $50, but now they're raising the expectation to $70. And obviously, the large financial institutions are buying in at some point there. So, so if they're buying in at that local level, or at that local number, at that lower number, then what we're going to see is that when the IPO opens to the retail investor, and many times an IPO doesn't necessarily always launch or open to the retail trader on open of the stock exchange, the stock market. Sometimes it opens a little bit later, but we see a lot of pre-buying. You see those. And then what we end up seeing is that the financial institutions are beginning to dump their bags of lower purchased stocks onto the retail investor. And I'm not saying this is every case, but every case seems to be a little bit unique in how they will pump or not pump it. But obviously the tendency is to pump an IPO because you have backers, and you have backers that want to get their investment dollars out of it if they can up front. Yet they're going, so you're going to see a pump of it. And we saw this with Facebook, saw this with Twitter, we saw this recently with Lyft. We've seen it with others in the space, and it's just not hyper focused. Chip, XRP Minute, what's going on? Glad you could join us. We had a nice talk here about Ireland a little bit before you popped on. Mr. B, what's up? Glad to see you on. Yes, Wall Street is definitely on its way. Wall Street is definitely coming. We're talking a little bit about, and kind of going back and rehashing my thoughts on how IPOs are manipulated to help financial institutions capture gains while dumping on the retail investor, and always identifying and trying to pump and hype the FOMO on that IPO launch. And so when times you'll see a run up, and then you'll see it start dropping off considerably. And we saw that again. Facebook, it happened with Facebook, it happened with Twitter, and it happened with Lyft. And so it's definitely something that happens on seems to happen on a more regular basis than what we'd anticipate. I just realized my one arm was cut off here. Let me change that. There we go. All right. So let me pop open the chat again. All right, cool. So what I wanted to really emphasize, I guess, now is, as we think about the manipulation within the media with the large financial institutions, and then you start pulling it all together, you put it in perspective. So like I said, bringing up some of the things that DNI had said on some of his chats, when you really start connecting the dots of what's happening. So we don't want to just focus in and pretend that one space is a vacuum, because it isn't. And there's a lot of things that are happening on a global stage. There's a lot of things that are happening politically as well as economically. And so you have government actors as well as non-government actors like the IMF that are really focused on that impact for digital asset. And so it's interesting, as I was driving yesterday, I was having a conversation, and I was trying to explain the significance of the digital asset space, the significance of what RippleNet means for cross-border payments. We're talking about a lot of this with the FUD and the FOMO, and really trying to get this point across, talking about, what happens within Forex trading, what happens within stock trading, now what's happening within the digital asset space, and the significance of the fact that if we went back a couple years ago and governments and the large financial institutions, had they taken it seriously in terms of displacing mainstream traditional financial institutions, I think we may have seen a different outcome, and we may have seen governments and financial institutions attempting really to crush the digital asset space. At that time, it'd be in its infancy, when it was just coming up, and they would have tried to crush it and done away with it. I don't know if they hadn't, at that point in time, if they had anticipated the full extent on how it would really reach out, all over. And really at that point, Anthony Jackson, what's up, man? That's awesome, man. Thumbs up. Thank you. Hit the thumbs up if you can. That would be great. If you're new to the channel, you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Throw it up on Twitter. Blast it out there. That'd be awesome. So, so I guess, so as we dig into this, so let's look, and this is interesting because if we look at the intent now, so that was before governments, financial institutions, did they or did they not really anticipate what the outcome was going to be? It's hard to say specifically, although we saw large institutions and large banks that were filing for blockchain patents years ago. So we can go back, 5 years ago, 2014, maybe even 2013. We saw some of the larger institutions filing for patents. And actually, if you go back all the way through my videos, I had made a video on patents at one point. I talked about Walmart's filing for patents into the healthcare space when it came to blockchain. So banks, large institutions started at one point to identify the significance of the technology, wanted to make sure they secured their space first and foremost. So if they can secure their plot of land, so to speak, regardless of what the outcome was, at least they knew they were staking claim. And so while they were staking claim to blockchain and technology, were they really focused on what the expansion of the digital asset space would really mean economically and financially, to a point where it could potentially displace fiat currency, potentially, not necessarily, and I don't think that's going to happen in the short term, but it's been talked about by many others, and D&I talks about that as well. But had they ever anticipated that something like that could happen? I'm not sure. But what I do know is that when they see money, the writing's on the wall, and when we begin to see the media frenzy start to pick up, that's how we know things are beginning to change in that direction. So let me just see. AJ, Anthony Jackson, I talked to you already. Let's see. Yeah, thanks, Chip. Sean J, what's up? I don't think I saw you on here before. Were you on already? Anyhow, just want to say hi to everyone that's popped in. Anna, glad you're on. Thanks for joining in. So, so what we're seeing right now is the beginnings of mass media frenzy or FOMO, towards a frenzy of FOMO, let's say. So think about the past year. Think about all the FUD that we've seen on Forbes. Think about, if you go back, and this is interesting too, if you go back to the end of 2017, leading into the beginning of 2018, all we had was just nonstop FOMO. The big media outlets are all of a sudden seeing the digital asset space ramping up exponentially and Bitcoin hitting 20,000, and that's all they could talk about. They had no idea what they were talking about, but that's all they could talk about, the mainstream media. Then as the price came down, now we've seen basically a year of FUD coming out of mainstream media. We've seen a year of FUD coming out of larger financial institutions. Obviously, there's some out there that we've seen some positives as well. But that seems to have been the trend. Really trying to hold back the market, make sure that it doesn't get away from them, keep the speculative nature of the market down, and make sure that they didn't see a significant ramp up in the value after they really, there was a you know, real, well, as there was a decrease in the market. I want to say it was their initiative to decrease the market. I think that might not necessarily be 100% accurate. However, was that FOMO? Obviously, the FOMO led to the spike in the digital asset space. Obviously, those that are buying, the media fed into it. So there was then, yes, you know, Chip is saying so much manipulation. There was a manipulation on the downside, pushing it and pushing and pushing it. We saw that from the financial institutions and highlighted by the mainstream. And so then we see that trend, and we see that decrease as it kind of leveled off. And it's been fairly consistently in that, you know, kind of downward trend, and with the mass media and everybody kind of pushing, and the financial institutions, you know, pushing the digital asset space down. And so now, and this goes back to intent. So what was the true intent of these large financial institutions? What was the true intent of a JP Morgan to badmouth the space while they then had their Me Too moment to launch the JPM coin, which I thought it's interesting because there's an article on that regarding the JPM coin and how many other banks they've begun to work with in regards to cross-border payments. We'll talk about that in a minute. So now we start seeing timing of everything. We start seeing the IMF kind of ramping up their discussion of digital assets. We start seeing governments around the world. We start seeing larger banking institutions really identifying the importance of this space. The financial institutions have been, again, relatively on the negative side, but at the same time, now we see news announcements coming out on TD Ameritrade and now on ETrade that they're adopting or going to begin to trade Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so this is now mainstream adoption. So this is something that obviously they don't just flip a switch and it happens overnight. There's no possible way that an ETrade or an Ameritrade would just all of a sudden a week ago say, you know what, I think it's time for us to flip the switch. So this means that they would have had to orchestrate their software development. I'm not a software developer, but I have to anticipate that to add, even if you're adding the API component to allow for the trading, but you're putting it into your platform, you know, are they incorporating it as Robinhood, or are they going to incorporate it with an actual wallet so you can move digital assets over to your ETrade account and then move your digital assets out of your ETrade account to any other wallet, online or offline. So that's going to be interesting to see how they roll it out. Same thing with TD Ameritrade. But regardless, it doesn't happen overnight. So that means they've been orchestrating this whole time with an intent of being ready when they felt the market was ready, that they would then get into it. And it's not that they're just dipping their toe in it. They want to, once they launch that platform, that means that they're in the trading of Bitcoin and Ethereum and potentially others as they roll out. So, all right, let's see. Digital clout going on. It's felt like a bull run coming for months. Then all of a sudden we get suppressed. Yeah, so there's that up and down, and it's a constant roller coaster in the market. And you see that again. You see that with stocks too. There's up and down, and then all of a sudden the market sentiment seems to be right. And then you'll see a run up on a stock, you know, when everything kind of falls into line, you know, everything aligns itself. And then all of a sudden, you know, the stock will take off. But with a stock, from a stock perspective, you can see the alignment happening, and you'll have a lot of the financial factors of the company that have something to do with that as well. And many times there's announcements and other things that lead into it that could potentially be seen as a manipulation as well. However, Mr. D, hopefully the bull run doesn't come too soon, more accumulation time. Yeah, so, you know, are we going to see, and we saw, you know, the spike up end of 2017, it happened relatively quick, but with every large spike, and that's also the concern, even in in a stock investment, from a stock investment perspective, if you have too sudden of a ramp up in price, then the other side of the cliff is pretty far down. And so I think, we saw that, and I think if there's anybody in technical analysis on right now and you want to chime in on that, you can probably add a lot more value to that part of the conversation. But just through observing, when you see those steady ramp ups, and it starts climbing and climbing and climbing, maybe you have a little bit of a pullback. Now the thing is, during the climbs and when you have the ebb and flow of a stock, and even as it's kind of trending in an upward pattern, those ebb and flows are there's accumulation points and there's sell-off points. And so you have people that are accumulating and taking profits. And so as you take profits and the market sentiment, as you have a bunch of investors at that point, there's those technical analysis indicators that'll be flipped. And so those are the taking profit moments. And as you get a large percentage of the market taking profits, then you're going to have a pullback, and then you're going to go into another accumulation period. So it's a natural tendency with a stock, even on an upward curve. So upward curves are good. Sudden spikes, as you'll see, like with penny stocks or others, you get a bunch of FOMO or misinformation or whatever being spread because there's people manipulating the penny stock, and it'll blast off, and then it hits that top, and then boom, it starts falling, and you better get out of that stock if that's something you invest in. And it's not something, I don't invest in penny stocks, but I think that's really relevant to where we're at now, because we've gone from the investment stage and really getting the word out stage, and now we are seeing, we have the accumulation stage. And as we get into utility, and for utility, we need more mainstream adoption. For mainstream adoption, you need an easier method for which to invest in the stocks. And Chip, you talked about that the other day. That it definitely it needs to be easier for the mainstream person to buy a digital asset. So most people in the mainstream want the security that is given by an ETrade, by a TD Ameritrade, by their stock brokerage that they're comfortable working with. They're not comfortable having to, figure out a digital asset wallet, figure out how to move your digital assets from your online wallet to your offline wallet, the potential of losing it, and the long numbers and the logins and the passwords and et cetera, that we all know. So for mainstream adoption to truly kick in, there really needs to be an easier way for the mainstreamers. And so that's now where we're at. So if TD Ameritrade and ETrade have now identified that this is the timing, then I think we have amazing things ahead of us. And it's interesting, there was a tweet that went out by Digital Asset Investor, and he was talking about 6 years ago how he was mentioning to his wife that how amazing will it be when XRP is going to be available to be moved to his ETrade account. And here we go. And he was pretty fired up. It seemed like in that tweet that we're starting to see that reality take place. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, Warren Buffett, who knows? But Warren Buffett has missed the boat on a lot of things, right? Warren Buffett badmouthed Google. Warren Buffett badmouthed Amazon. I'm sure Warren Buffett badmouths Twitter and Facebook, all the things he doesn't understand. And so just because a guy's a multi-billionaire a couple times over doesn't mean that he has all the answers and he's always right. That just means he's made a lot of good decisions in the space that he originally invested in, took those gains, and was able to then multiply them with other good investments in other areas. So if he understands the real estate market, Donald Trump understood the real estate market and expanded a real estate empire, from a small holding, and so he got that initial kickstart, understood what it would take, blew it up. Warren Buffett made his money in stocks, understood certain sectors within the stock market, had a ton of money. And then, once you're liquid, obviously it's easier to invest, up and down. But I bet if we tracked every single one of Warren Buffett's investments, they don't all turn to gold. There's always going to be a negative in there someplace. You can't always win every single investment. As an overall, though, you really have to look at all of your investments as a whole, and then you'll see your positive outcomes. So yeah, he's made billions in other assets. So does he really need the digital asset space? Obviously, he could take $1 million tomorrow, would have zero significance to him, and he could care less if he loses that $1 million or not. He could take that $1 million and put it into XRP, put it into Bitcoin, put it into whatever. And a few years from now, that $1 million would, multiply. You look at the what are they? I can't think of their names. The Gemini guys. Hey, my dog's trying to give me the answer. Anyhow, so those guys invested, the money they got out of Facebook, out of the Facebook. Hey, we're live over here. So yeah, the Winklevoss twins, right? So they took their money they got out of their Facebook settlement, and those guys, got bought into Bitcoin, and they bought a significant holding. And look what they did. I mean, those guys saw the future. Obviously, they're tech. They took the risk, and that risk panned out significantly for them. So, hey, he has to protect me from who knows what. So anyhow, hey, Mickey B. Fresh, good morning. Glad you joined in. Gaming Crypto, what's up? Glad you made it on. Wouldn't they just offer paper trading? Who's the they? Are we talking about ETrade and TD Ameritrade? So I think that is really the significance. So now let's tie in, I think, some of the other points here, some of the other timing of what's going on. All right, let's see. Luke Pin, digital will disrupt all our life. If did with my life for the last 16 months, I have my wife always remember me. Okay. So I assume you're saying that digital assets are going to disrupt everybody's life. And there's a lot of good things at the end that could potentially happen with digital assets. Yeah, so gaming crypto, yeah, ETrade. That's what I would like to know. I don't know that for a fact yet, but so what we need to look at. Sorry, I still have this chest cold, and I can't seem to get rid of it. It's been like 2 weeks. But so if we look at Robinhood as an example. Now, Robinhood is a perfect example, I guess, of paper trading. So all you're doing in Robinhood, when you buy on Robinhood, you buy digital asset on Robinhood, you're basically just being acknowledged that you have a digital asset, but you don't actually own the digital asset. So so I think that's important to understand the differences. And now, if we understand the difference of, and I'm sure we all do, the mainstream investors, this next stage, they won't understand the difference necessarily because it may not even be told to them. So as early adopters, we had the opportunity to really control our own investment portfolio, control, what we do or don't do with our digital assets. Robinhood was the first initiating. Hey, Farshad, good morning. What's going on? So Robinhood seemed to be one of the first to really initiate in that space as far as paper trade. Obviously, we've seen other exchanges overseas, Japan. We've seen Swiss exchange. We've seen other exchanges outside the U.S. begin adopting digital asset trading. Robinhood, as a paper trader, again, meaning that you basically buy your digital asset, it's on paper only. They should be holding, if you own one Bitcoin, they should be holding one Bitcoin to the one Bitcoin that you hold on paper, but you cannot move that off their exchange. You can either buy more or you can sell, and that's it. Yo, Farshad, man, thanks for the morning $4.99. Appreciate it. Gaming crypto, let's see, right, then we have to trust they actually, there you go, we have to trust that they actually have the digital assets and that they've sold. Yeah, so I think that's an interesting kind of topic to go down, and it has a lot to do with our trust in financial institutions in general, but if we look at, let's say, a Tether that really changed the rules of the game when they were supposed to be holding $1 for every one Tether, but then they changed the rules and they actually admitted they didn't have $1. They potentially had other assets with the equivalent thereof. So I think that is super problematic. Now, if you have a Robinhood, we have to trust that they're going out and buying that Bitcoin stock, just as though if I went on to Robinhood or ETrade or a TD Ameritrade and I bought a share of Facebook, I have to believe that I actually have that share of Facebook. I should be able to transfer my share of Facebook from ETrade to TD Ameritrade or to any other exchange that I use to trade stock. I should be able to move my portfolio and maintain ownership of that portfolio. But in the meantime, they're holding my share of Facebook, I guess, in custody, so to speak, until I decide to move it elsewhere. Now, the same thing should happen when it comes to digital asset. We should be able to take our digital asset and move it. We shouldn't be forced to sell it. Now, I have used and tested out Robinhood. I liked it for stock. I did buy and I've sold some digital asset on Robinhood. I still hold some digital assets on Robinhood as a separate portfolio, completely outside of what I normally do. And I thought it was an interesting way to do it. I want to see what the outcome is. Not really sure. But Farshad, heading to the gym. Have fun. Enjoy. I didn't get to my workout yet this morning, but I'm looking forward to doing that here soon. So let's get down into this a little bit more, because this is where again, the mass media making their announcements right now, making their announcements right now in regards to whether, again, it's TD Ameritrade or whether it's ETrade getting ready to get into the game. Now, there were two specific articles that I pulled up from yesterday. One was on Yahoo Finance, and so I want to look at, again, mainstream media reporting, not necessarily the digital asset media space like CCN or the normal places you'd go for cryptocurrency trading information. But this is interesting because we have ETrade is looking to unleash crypto onto its 5 million retail clientele. Hang on a second, let me do something. There we go. All right. So let me just bring you guys through this here. Let's see, it's got about 15 minutes to the hour. So here, this is on Yahoo Finance. Yahoo a while ago added digital assets to their screening as well, so you could log in and you could run information on digital asset. But so if we look through this, and this is interesting too, because 5 million retail customers that ETrade works with. That's a huge volume that they're going to give access of Bitcoin and Ethereum to. So as you drill down into their article, they do bring up, in the wake of TD Ameritrade quietly opening Bitcoin trading for some of its customers. I was just told ETrade is preparing to begin offering both Bitcoin and Ethereum to the 5 million or so, and is just finalizing a third party to actually hold the coins. So they need to have those coins in custody somewhere, and there's some great custodian accounts that they can work with, and that we had talked about a number of months ago, I believe. I brought that up regarding the I can't. I'm trying to think of the name of the company. I don't know why I can't think of it. But anyhow, I just kind of focus in on this. But they're holding, and the main point of the company is to hold digital assets in custody for large financial institutions for this exact purpose. Gemini is actually one of those, and I know Coinbase has gotten into it as well through Coinbase Pro to be a custodian for these larger financial institutions, but there are a few others that hold everything in cold storage. So this is important that they're working towards, and obviously if ETrade is going to get into it, they're going to do everything the right way, and they need to have a mechanism to hold the coin. So from that perspective, it seems like they're going to be holding them in custody for you with the opportunity to then send them out, so I think that should be great. Now let's jump over to, I think this was Bloomberg, also from yesterday. So now we have two mainstream media outlets that are broadcasting and really promoting the digital asset space same day. Obviously they want to both get into it. They want to both make sure they get the media out there. Again, the question is though, where is the working together? Is it a collusion of sort between the media and the large institutions, the large financial institutions? So obviously, press releases, there's leaks that come out purposely to the media to make sure they start, pumping up the information. So here we have now Bloomberg, talking about ETrade, so close to launching. And this is significant because now we have Yahoo Finance, which has really grown over the years as a source of financial information, and Bloomberg, which is one of the preeminent sources of financial information, both talking about ETrade, one of the largest exchanges, getting into and getting ready to offer their customers and their entire customer base access to both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, when we started, we talked about the fact that they don't truly understand the digital asset space, although especially from the media perspective, I'm sure these guys within ETrade and elsewhere they do. But when we get into the media, this is going to be those that are now going to attempt to educate the general public. I think this is interesting here because let's see here. Oh, I just saw something pop up. Sorry, kind of have Farshad. What's up, man? Thank you very much for that. Man, twice in one day. That's awesome, bro. Really nice. Thank you. So this is okay. So now where I'm going with this, media will be educating the mainstream, but will they be educating them correctly? I think it's amazing because we have educators right here on YouTube. We have educators on Twitter. All of you guys that are engaged in chatting, educators to really help with this process. Now, from this perspective, I think it's interesting too because here it says the brokerage giant will offer Bitcoin and Ethereum. Service will compete with startups like Coinbase and Robinhood. Okay, so that's interesting, Coinbase and Robinhood, but they made a mistake in this article. I'm trying to pick it out exactly, but I just think it's interesting here. Look at this. ETrade would be one of the largest security brokerages to allow crypto trading. It will enter into a competitive market with startups like Coinbase. And look at this. Coinbase, closely held, reached a valuation of $8 billion in 2018 with projected sales of $1.3 billion. And then we have Robinhood, fintech startup that has been valued at 5.6. There's actually talks of Robinhood launching an IPO at some point. So that is something to look out for. They're growing at an exponential rate in what they do. Let's see. Now, they create a little bit of FUD in the article, even though they had some a lot of FOMO, but they have to bring that up. You know, the fact that one of the prominent crypto exchanges hit a loss of about 850 million, which tanked the Bitcoin price. And they're also talking about that Bitcoin hasn't yet gone back to its highs of 2017. All true, but it's still worth about 35% more than it was at the start of 2019. So this is an amazing article, you know, to show up on Bloomberg that's so positive. There's something in here that I had found on, let me see. That's not even on, it's not here. I don't know if they changed this article or what, but there was a specific statement in the article that said they were oh, here, no, I don't know. Anyhow, it's not my point. When I had read the article originally, is that they actually had something in here that they were stating that Coinbase and Robinhood were the same, yet they weren't. Anyhow, all right, doesn't matter. All right, so let me go back here. Let me get back to here. I don't need to share anything again, so transition back over here. So I thought that was interesting. Anyways, let me pop up the chat window. See what we got here. Okay, BitTrue looks pretty good. Awesome. You know, I missed the whole thing. I haven't dug deep enough on BitTrue. Uphold, I like Uphold. Uphold's great. I've been buying on Uphold. And that's just a real easy one to use. Uphold is definitely easy to use. So let's see, gaming crypto. I'm just going back through some of the chats. Pull something up here for the end. This reminds me how a mainstream app could be the first movers only to be replaced by newer apps that cater to the trend properly, e.g. sending XRP to a trading platform to buy stocks. Yeah, I think so too. I believe that a mainstream app would definitely, I think we're going to see more and more development in that space. You look at like the XRP tip bot, it's a great idea. It's, you know, showing the potential utility of digital asset to move money seamlessly between people through a platform that you would never think that you could easily send money through, which is Twitter. That is all telling that you don't even need to worry about wallet to wallet, but you can go and just send money through through their bot and then on through Twitter to send money over. I think that is pretty amazing. You know, so the fact that those guys have been able to prove that use case, and that's just the beginning stage. So we're kind of the sandbox test market using it, because obviously just sending tips back and forth through Twitter isn't the end purpose of the potential of an XRP tip bot, when it can be used for all out purchasing power. And also think about if you go into a restaurant and you want to give somebody a tip instead of leaving it cash, or if you want to pay a bill and you can just use the XRP tip bot to pay your bill with XRP through your phone. You send the tweet. So it's an interesting idea that you can do that, and you know who you're sending it to. And again, you don't even have to scan anything. You don't have to go to a wallet. It's just, there's so much that could be developed from that. I think they're just scratching the surface. So Robinhood did come out real early, and quick with crypto. They really did a great job. Yeah, and they do offer Dogecoin. I made money on Dogecoin with that. So ACAK. Let's see here. Simon.G. Morning. All traders enter the ring. Nothing moves the price nowadays. The price movement is we talked about that in the beginning. It kind of steadied out a little bit, but we're definitely going to see some big movements in the. There's just too much trending. And here's a final note to really leave with, and this is, I already have it open. Let me see if I can find it. Well, actually, there are two amazing things that happen that have been discussed here. One is SAB bank. It's a subsidiary, I believe, or an affiliate of HSBC, and they launched new Ripple-based cross-border instant payments recently, and they created a rail between Saudi Arabia and India using Ripple and RippleNet. There's a ton going on at the same time, and when we talk about monetary control, China has really seen that Bitcoin and digital assets are potentially a threat to their control over their fiat economy, and so when your government works within monetary control of the populace, that could then be a threat to that exact control. It's interesting to me, though, that India has partaken in this insanity of driving away digital asset companies. The very country that within the past year attempted to get rid of 75% of their fiat currency, moving people into a digital format. And so that digital format attempting to bank the unbanked, but yet not providing the easiest tools or the least expensive tools, which would come through digital assets to help bank the unbanked. There's still a heavy toll or cost to be applied, where those that have little in a country like India are being forced to give up their fiat currency, that they live in a world of nothing but paper money, and being forced to then digitize. And so when they dump and get rid of 75% of their paper currency in favor of digital, you would think that that was paving the way towards an easier assimilation of digital asset, but that doesn't really seem to be the case in India. And there's still a lot of controversy and discussion in India that is detrimental, not just to India financially over the next couple of years, but is going to be detrimental to the world. So the U.S., we've definitely seen dragging of feet when it comes to regulatory clarity to help push the digital asset space. Yet we talked about an article on the last stream about blockchain jobs increasing in demand in the U.S. With that technology ramping up here. Yet there's still many that are eyeing the flight from the U.S. without that regulatory clarity. Yet within the U.S., we see states battling it out. So, and we see at a congressional level with like the Token Taxonomy Act. So there's a lot of positives in the U.S. Everything government-wise in the U.S. moves super, super slow. So we can't really expect that there's going to be all these major changes and overhaul within the economy to accept digital asset within that slow kind of molasses progression that everything has to go through. But we know we're going through that process with hopefully positive outcome. India, on the other hand, seems to be in chaos and pandemonium when it comes to digital asset, and they destroyed their largest exchanges that had ramped up. And so that's super detrimental to their space. But from a technology growth perspective, India is the perfect space to help really drive the demand for the unbanked into the banked. It's the perfect space where we have a huge amount of educated people in technology that can create amazing things within this within digital assets and the utility of digital assets, and it's going to go unrealized and untapped potentially because of government influence and interference. So let me see here. Annalise, thank you very much for that. Always try to bring something interesting. So glad you appreciate it. Let me see here. Simi, let's see. You said only thing I'm iffy about BitTrue is the volume on the site ATM and can never catch the stake for XRP. I'm not 100% familiar with BitTrue, so I'm gonna have to check it out. Will these big financial institutions getting into crypto assets put the original exchanges out of business? I think that's interesting. So we have talked about this before, that I believe that the bigger exchanges have already solidified themselves in this space. They are, if you look at like an Uphold, or you look at a Coinbase, or you look at a Gemini, they've established themselves in the space as custodians. Look at ETrade. ETrade is not going to hold the digital asset themselves. ETrade can't open until they have a solution to actually custody digital assets for them. So they're not going to leave what they know, but they're going to partner and utilize a third party. Who that third party is interesting. Coinbase, Uphold, and the others already are lightning years ahead of where the bigger institutions are. So they are, Mikey B, they're definitely, it's the old guard is definitely fighting the trend. And so that's interesting. So they need to join in. They have to participate. And this is where they built the infrastructure to begin trading because they can't be left behind. So an E-Trade would be left behind if everything goes into that digital asset or tokenization phase. And as others, and we've talked about it a bit, if we see the tokenization of stocks, what does that mean for an E-Trade or a Fidelity or a TD Ameritrade if stocks become tokenized and they can't then, they're not ready to trade these tokens, the stocks that have been then tokenized, and they're not involved in that part. So there's so much that can still happen within this space. And we've talked a bit about real estate and all of the different ways that it can be tokenized. These big financial institutions want a piece of all of that, and they're going to be left behind if they don't find a way through. So the fact that they're jumping in now, to me, seems to be all telling that now they're realizing that now's the time they got to get in. It's now or never, and so they got to get in. And so that's interesting as they analyze the space. And those guys, they got brilliant people that work for these exchanges that know a hell of a lot about the movement of money and the trends. So if they're jumping in and saying now's the time, I got to believe that they've given it some thought. You have to believe, anyways. It's also their survival instinct. So like Mikey B said, it's the old guard fighting. They have to survive, and if they see that trend moving. So yo, Richter, what's up? Glad to see you on. We're kind of coming to a wrap up here in a minute. So the last point that I want to bring up on this is JP Morgan, JPM coin, cross-border payments. So I think it's significant and it's complementary to what Ripple has been doing with RippleNet. It doesn't just justify the technology, but it acknowledges that the technology is real, that the technology is needed, and that the solution is the right solution to displace the way bank wire transfers have been handled up to this point through SWIFT, and acknowledges that banks have not been happy with working with outdated messaging technology, that they're seeing there's a future, and the future could be faster, cheaper, less expensive for the consumer, but less expensive for the bank to work within this transaction. So to me, JPM developing in the blockchain, again, it's significant. Are they going to be able to serve as a significant competitor to a RippleNet or other? I think they can be a competitor on the stage, but I don't know that they're going to be a significant competitor. However, and this could be, this was on Cointelegraph, this information came out 2 days ago, but it says that JP Morgan continues to explore the blockchain for cross-border payments, having signed 220 banks worldwide along the way. And that's something I think that needs to be explored a little bit, because these are probably bank affiliates that were already working with JP Morgan. So it wasn't as though they went out and recruited banks outside of their little clique, so to speak. And that's what I'm trying to really identify. And I'm not sure in this article, they exactly, because here it says, if you look at the banks that have joined in. Now, if we look back as to what JPM coin was or was to be, the JPM coin is really meant for intertrade between branches that are already working with JP Morgan. So for that to happen, that means that all of these banks would then potentially have already had to have had specific channels or rails or what have you, set up with some sort of partnership with JP Morgan to be able to utilize this JPM coin. But here it says at the very bottom of the article, more than 220 banks worldwide have signed up as members of the IIN. And let me go back up and get what the IIN was, definition-wise. Let's see here. Where is it? They described IIN, which is, where is it? All right, I'm not seeing it here. I skipped right over it. Not it. So here's there's a lot going on in that area, but anyhow, so they signed up as members of the IIN, including banking powerhouses such as Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corp, Credit Agricole, the world's largest cooperative bank by turnover, and Banco Santander. The network is expanding at a swift pace. More than 60 banks joined it just within the past few months, given that IIN consisted of 157 member banks. So competition is a good thing. Competition coming from a bank like JP Morgan, to me, is a good thing. Would JP Morgan work with RippleNet? Probably not at this point. And so there, and we talked about this before. There's always been room for Pepsi and Coke. There's always been room for McDonald's and Burger King. So there's definitely going to be room when we on a global stage when it comes to RippleNet and whatever else is going to be offered in the space. Now the big question is, again, it's really legitimate, not legitimizing, or justifying, but it gives credence to the fact that RippleNet and Ripple are on the right path, that it's an amazing solution. JP Morgan attempting to catch up to that space and get a little piece of the action. That's how I see it, so it could be a really interesting topic to really dig in a lot further. I've been trying to put together something on Fedwire and do an overall comparison between Fedwire and RippleNet and Ripple solution. I'm still trying to I want to get more details on Fedwire before I roll that out. So that's really it, guys. It was, as usual, great feedback, great conversation. Appreciate all of you, for joining on early morning on a Saturday to sit and talk about digital asset with me. So Chip, make sure you guys check out XRP Minute. He's got some great videos on there. Chip is streaming on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings at 10 p.m. Appreciate that, XRP Minute. And then Monday, Wednesday, I'll be on at 10 o'clock. Make sure you guys check out DNI. Before that, he brings up a lot of great points, a lot of good conversation pieces on Monday through Friday, so at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time also. Mr. D, thanks for joining in. Appreciate your feedback, your comments. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hopefully we'll see you back on again. For all those of you that are new to the channel, subscribe. For those of you that have been on before, share it with your friends. Let's get the word out. Try to expand this space. Final note, Chip is building out a website, hopefully that will be really functional for all of us, especially really staying in on tune with a lot of those that are streaming and all of that. So it's going to be a great space, And I believe it could develop into something even more from an educational perspective, with everybody chipping in a little bit with some information and some posts and all of that. So I know that Chip had some great ideas for that site. So anyhow, again, yeah, great. Thanks for coming on again. This is Jeff with the HODL Report, and until I see you guys next time, keep on hodling your crypto.